People rarely die from heroin alone. It's the combination that's deadly. Maybe we should blast it out as a public health education message. That way, at least we're keeping people safe. These are words of a known researcher whose research study was on drug addiction and drug abuse, and he is also known for using drugs, including heroin. Carl L. Hart was the first black American tenured as a science professor at Columbia University. His interest was in psychological and social factors influencing individual administration of drugs. Today, very few programs are advocating for the stop of drug abuse. In addition, more studies are being done regarding the effects of drug abuse. I believe that we would not be here if it wasn't for Carl L. Hart and his contributions to the drug abuse field that laid the foundation of recreational drug abuse and drug addiction. Working in the drug abuse field is familiar to Carl L. Hart, also called the Truth Teller. Carl Hart earned his name through his title, but I have been studying drugs for 22 years, 14 years at Columbia, and we have quite a bit of scientific evidence-based information. And I am here to tell you, drugs are not the boogeyman that people said they were, according to Mr. Tony in the article The Truth Teller. In emphasizing and praising Carl L. Hart for his studies, I would like to further explain accomplishments and contributions that are still in effect till today. It is easy to think that drug abuse is just the use of using drugs. But drug abuse is a serious issue and is surrounded by many shortcomings. For a very long time, there have been a drug campaign existing, and the goal of the campaign is to inspire people and mobilize people to act against using drugs. Hart believes that the use of drugs ought to be made legal for all people who are legal age and are fit to be called grown-ups. By that, I mean autonomous, responsible, well-functioning, healthy adults, as part of the American right to live, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as Mr. Shipper said in the article, What If Drugs Aren't as Bad as We've Been Told? It is hard imagining living in a world where people use drugs freely will exist. Advocating for a sensible drug policy is related to reasoning like toddlers. In the article titled No Easy Fix, Carl argued that arresting the drug users will bring a lot of harm compared to the good. Carl dismantled racist underpinnings of the arguments that drug use leads to crime and poverty, highlighted the benefits of reducing harm, and convincingly took effect in the brain effect. Carl recommended drugs should be regulated and available. Recreational drug use is then the policy of good drugs. Much like the decision to own a car or a gun, it is an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. As said in the article No Easy Fix, drugs do not cause harm to people necessarily. Carl Hart explained that he was not a drug addict. Carl used methamphetamine, heroin, designer, and marijuana drugs. In the article, Drug Use for Grown-Ups, Carl insists that using these drugs does not limit his capacity as a father and professor. From the experiences, he concludes that using drugs is pleasurable, safe, and a fundamental right under the clause of the Declaration of Independence called the pursuit of happiness. Hart acknowledged the crisis of drug abuse and wrote, People are not dying because of opioids. They are dying of ignorance. And in this, he means that the issue is irresponsible to use for the non-grown-up users, Mr. Liam said in the article, Drug Use for Adults. Hart confirms that they could be safe if the users can identify fentanyl presence and other alterations in the heroin as they identify in festivals. This does not mean that using drugs can not cause people to go through significant problems or distress, impairing their ability to function. Carl pointed out that around 70 to 90% of people use stigmatized drugs, as methamphetamine and heroin do not meet the criteria for this disorder that comes with substance disorder. An addiction is a small result of the use of drugs, but it has received a lot of attention, said in the article, Acute Psychological and Behavioral Effects of Methamphetamine. The second one is that if many people use a certain drug do not become addicts, then the use of drugs should not be said to cause drug addiction. The war on drugs has done nothing but curb drug use and has started subsidizing the prison industry sprawling complex mentioned by Mr. Lopez in the article The War of Drugs. He believes that talking about addiction and drugs is wrong and actively blocks how society lives up to liberal ideas and pursues happiness. He argued that all drug users should be legalized instead of being shamed and punished, and it is essential to focus on helping them how to use the drugs wisely. The drug is frequently abused via the smoke routes, but few studies have evaluated the acute effects of methamphetamine in humans using these routes of administration. Mentioned in both articles, Harmful Drug Abuse on the Brain is Killing Black People and The Truth Teller. Drug and drug abuse is a topic that still needs and requires a lot of attention. In Carl Hart's thinking, most of the drug and drug abuse scholars leave out key discussion elements when talking about drug abuse. They talk about drug abuse effects. Carl is a well-known professor at Columbia University, where he continues doing his research and teaching things from his school of thought. Carl O. Hart is a psychologist in America and is famous for his research on drug addiction, drug abuse, and the open use of drugs. Heroin included in that. The contributions that Carl O. Hart gave have enabled to open minds of new views regarding drugs, and most of the researchers may adopt this format and build up the research based on his thoughts. I want to leave you with one of Carl O. Hart's quotes that he wrote to justify his passion for his research. I've had investigations of my lab because people did not like what I have to say. Moreover, you're shut down for a while when you have investigations and do research. You must start all over again, so that's one area where I get paid high.